I'm Vin.
I'm Sori.
That's Booby.
A Jalby, Ghosty, Chip.
Nick Cave and the Bad Seats in the Anarchy 99 Alliance. Alliances are pretty awesome things, and they're pretty easy to join. It's simply $1 at the door to get you in the door, and then based on what people in the particular alliance come together and vote for, that's a song that'll get pushed up right to the front of the line. There's multiple ways to get your song requested.
Yeah.
The alliance is the most efficient way to do it. It's the most
depends on the person that you are. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, most of us don't have $75 to do for a song, but $1.
And if you don't have $1 a month, then you can always throw it up in different spots, and sometimes we randomly just pick one from comment section or firesides. Mostly firesides when we do
firesides will get you. Yeah.
We're really missing doing those. That's our live streams.
Yeah. Well, once
they shall return.
In 2020, once we get caught up, inshallah, we should set a goal to be completely caught up by 2020, so we can have a...
By 2020, babe, that's like 4 days away?
Right. So, if we did 5 songs a day, we'd be able to do that easily.
Then, yeah, we should try to do that.
For timely topical political commentary, and if you want to be angry at the most infuriating person on the internet... you can check out Middle America, Vin and Sori.
Or you might hate me because I actually made a Middle America video. It's only like 2 or 3 minutes long. And as soon as we can figure out why it's not going up, we'll fix that and then put it up for you.
It's the color of Allah.
I know.
He's like, one person from this duo has to be perpetually liked. Alright, this is Mercy or Mercy Seat. Nick Cave and the Bad Seats, let's go.
Go.
I began to warm and chill to objects and their fields. Ragged cup and a twisted mop, face of Jesus in my soup. Those sinister dinner deals, meal trolleys, wicked wills. A hooked bone rising from my food, all things good are ungood. And the mercy seat is awaiting, and I think my head is a-burning. In a way I'm yearning to be done with all this weighing up of truth. An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. And anyway they had no proof, and I'm not afraid to die. Interpret sign and catalog, a blackened, two-faced scarlet fog. The walls are bad, black-bottom kind. They are the sick breath in my hind. They are the sick breath in my hind. They are the sick breath in my hind. They are the sick breath gathering at my hind. Well, I hear stories from the chamber how Christ was born into a manger, like some wretched stranger died upon the cross. And might I say it seems so fitting, in his way he was a carpenter by trade, or at least that's what I'm told. By killing the ten evil across his brother's fist, that filthy fire did nothing to challenge or resist. In heaven his throne is made of gold, and the ark of his testament is stowed. The throne from which I'm told all history does unfold. Down here it's made of wooden wire, and my body is on fire. God is never far away. Into the mercy seat I climb. My head is shaved, my head is wide, like a moth that tries to enter the bright eye. So
Wow. Oh, that's very deep. That's a very deep song. You know what he was talking about?
The mercy seat that was in the...
It's the electric chair.
What?
Yeah. Yeah, he's talking about going to the electric chair.
What?
Yeah.
I knew it was the whole thing gave me goosebumps, and I couldn't figure out why.
My head is smoking. Eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth.
Oh my gosh!
Right, his head is boiling, his head is melting, yada yada yada.
Ew!
That's
Jeez,
and I know exactly what thumbnail we're gonna use for this one. Whew, man. So I do not believe it is appropriate for Christians to advocate for the death penalty.
Yeah. Yep.
So I have a very, very nuanced sort of understanding of lethality when it comes to
yes.
How societies are supposed to operate. So is it Romans 13 or Romans 14 says the soldier does not bear the sword in vain. He is an agent of wrath to dispense justice to the wrongdoer. Mm-hmm. And in the previous chapter, Paul tells Christians, do not avenge yourselves. Mm-hmm. Leave room for the wrath of God. And then the very next chapter, he says the soldier doesn't bear the sword in vain, yada, yada, yada. Yep. So from that perspective, what I get is, and you know, this might offend people, but Proverbs says that God created everything in its season, even the wicked for the day of evil. Mm-hmm. So my perspective on things is that as Christians, as New World people, or as the renewed world people, and this is one of the reasons why I'm not a big heaven person, mm-hmm. right? Because if you're a heaven person, you're going to say, well, it's like this, I believe in heaven and people's conceptions of heaven to a degree. But heaven is not the mission of Jesus Christ.
Right.
The renewed earth and the renewed world is the mission of Jesus Christ. Mm-hmm. The kingdom of God on earth and the commingling of heaven and earth is the mission of Christ, not to get people whisked up to heaven.
Right. That's
not the point. And the people that are in heaven right now are incomplete, according to Paul. Mm-hmm. So, however, if your worldview is, hey, you know, people die, they go to heaven, and that's the mission of Jesus, then what happened was there was this woman. It was actually my first introduction to Bush, you know, our Bush, yeah. 9/11 Bush.
Yeah.
There was this woman. She was horrible. She axe murdered people. She killed her husband. She was despicable, terrible human being. She did terrible.
Okay.
She gets converted in jail. She becomes a Christian, and there's this giant push to save this woman because she was very repentant. And I think she said it'd be good if my life got spared, but I killed those people, so I get what I get. Mm-hmm. She wasn't really pushing it, but everybody around her was like, she changed. The warden was saying, everybody was saying it, and Bush at the time was governor. And he basically said, yeah, that's great, I'm glad, but she's gonna have to die. He didn't budge on it, and mm-hmm. they killed her. And I remember watching it, and my mother was, she was really upset. You know, she was like, I'm like, Mom, this woman axe murdered somebody, mm-hmm. man. She didn't give that guy any mercy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Of course, I was 14, 15 at the time, and I hadn't been put in any situations. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I'm like, because people really believe that killing somebody is this crazy thing that only a small group of people would do. They don't realize that.
Given the right circumstances.
Given the right circumstances, you would absolutely.
A lot of us have that in us.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Bush did it. He killed that lady, and when he became president, he killed all those innocent Iraqis. So, and he's off on some golf course right now dancing with Ellen. But he sanctioned our illegal war into Iraq, which all of us, and Afghanistan. There was going to be a Middle America documentary about Afghanistan and the fact that it was built on lots of lies. The Christian right at the time was saying, well, I mean, hey, you know, good for him. He stuck to his principles, yada, yada, yada. And it's yeah, and then 10 years later, he sanctioned, not even 10 years later, he sent us into Iraq under obviously wrong, false pretenses. Thank you, Mr. Mueller. Thank you, Condoleezza. Thank you, who's the other guy, the black dude, whatever, Colin Powell. Thank you, guys. And we went in there and killed a whole bunch of innocent people. So it's just, it's like, it's just, that's why I say, like...
You're saying he's sitting there saying, no, I don't care if she's, she's changed her mind and she's repentant about that.
Right.
Like, she did that deed, so she's going to get killed. Meanwhile, it's like...
Correct.
He went and sanctioned the death of all these innocent people. Like, what? Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. And not only him, but it was the Christian right that was pushing the Iraq war and all that. They were in full support of him. I remember being in church and when they caught Saddam and everybody was like, yay! And he got announced in church and everybody praised God. And there was only one guy, the leftist Christian, that was like not happy. Wow. Because we all knew that was going to be the end of Saddam. He was going to die. And so it's like, these are like seminal moments for me where that shaped my understanding of, like, we should not be advocating the death penalty as Christians.
Right.
Because, one, you never see that happen in the New Testament. There's not a single place where anybody in the New Testament is asking the government and supporting the government and killing human beings. It never happens in the New Testament. All the New Testament says is that the guy doesn't bear the sword in vain. He's an agent of wrath. And he's God's servant. And look, he's God's servant in the sense that he's dispensing wrath to the wrongdoer. But the scripture says that mercy triumphs over judgment.
Yep.
And so it's interesting. It doesn't say mercy triumphs over justice as to say that God is a sinner and that he's unjust. It says mercy triumphs over judgment. And so that should be the posture of Christians. We should be people that want mercy to triumph over judgment. And so it's inappropriate for Christians to be at the front of the line calling for capital judgment to fall on the head of any person.
Why do you think that Christians are in that situation where the majority of them are...
right-wing American Christians are in a certain situation, but I don't think the Christianity that is American Western Christianity is extremely unique and extremely nuanced and cannot be found anywhere in history or on anywhere else on the planet. So, and like I said, I just read a thing, there's like 10 Nigerian Christians just got beheaded by ISIS. And et cetera, and who am I to say what those people want? But I can tell you that when Jesus was being killed, he said, Father, forgive them. In Acts chapter 7, when Stephen was being stoned, he said, Lord, please don't hold this charge to their account. When Christians are dying in martyrdom, they ask for forgiveness for their persecutors. And if anybody had the right to appeal to the government and say, kill these people, it would have been the Christians in that moment. They didn't do that.
Right.
And they didn't even think about appealing to the earthly authority to execute judgment. Stephen is looking up and saying, look, man, you're the ultimate judge. Don't judge these people. So, I don't see any contradiction between Paul saying in Romans 14 that the soldier doesn't bear the sword in vain, he's God's servant to distribute justice to the wrongdoer, and saying it is inappropriate for us to want that justice or that judgment to happen, or to want that wrath to happen. Christians are not agents of wrath, we are agents of grace and mercy. So, but the irony of using the term mercy seat is such a brilliant...
I don't understand turn of events. Is he calling it a mercy seat because he said, like, basically in a way he was happy. Scroll. He basically said because he wants to get out of this. Keep going. Right here. And in a way, I'm hoping to be done with all this weighing up of truth. So it's a mercy in a sense because he gets out of our judicial system.
He wants to be out of the world.
Yeah.
In that sense, but we missed the first verse. It says, "It began when they took me from my home and put me in dead row, of which I'm nearly wholly innocent, And I'll say it again, I'm not afraid to die." So, like right there, it sets it up, But again, to me, I don't using the term. First of all, the term mercy seat is a biblical term. And Christ himself in the New Testament is called the mercy seat, and the mercy seat was the flat part of the Ark of the Covenant, between the two angels.
Yeah.
So you had angel here, and then there was a flat part of the Ark of the Covenant, and that flat part was called the mercy seat. So the idea was that the Ark of the Covenant carried the presence of God.
Yep.
And so the point that God is trying to communicate in the Old Testament here is that, like, I'm coming to you mercifully. Like, that's the point. And,
that's not the view that a lot of people have of the Old Testament.
Right.
But yeah,
in the Bible boogies, we always, we kind of hang out with the Old Testament God. We've been hanging out with him for quite some time. And that's just because I'm a big fan of the Old Testament God, because that's where I did
your favorite verses are there.
Yeah. So what's interesting is, at the resurrection, it talks about, where they laid Jesus. There was an angel at the top, the head, and an angel at the foot, which is an obvious.
Oh.
Yeah, it's an obvious correlation between that and the mercy seat, because there were two angels.
Yeah.
At the head and at the foot, and so the point is, because now you have a resurrected Jesus, you actually have a living, breathing, human, walking mercy seat in Jesus. But the way that he got there was by being executed by the governing authorities, wouldn't you know?
Right.
And so, for me, I'm just like, the irony of Christians, and it's, and I'm sure we're going to get a bunch of them out. You're being mean to right-wing Christians. That's my team. That's our team. That's where we came from. But it's a fact. It was all the leftists that were saying, give this girl a second chance. It was all the right-wing Christians that were saying, well, hey, good for him. He stuck to his principles. And my mom could not be in any way, shape, or form construed as a leftist. But she was really against it. But everybody else in the Christian circle was for it. And then
I don't even remember that.
And my mom would sit me down and we'd watch this stuff. It was a pretty morbid thing, because they basically kind of like had this countdown or whatever. I think it was it was Fox or something really like that. And then sure enough, she was dead. And then he gave his little press conference and he had his little smile or whatever. And Bush is kind of one of these, like, he'll say like the most evil shit, but he says it in sort of like, I'm just a good old boy. I just, I don't know what I'm just dumb.
No, I never really watched much of Bush.
He was ruthless, man. He's absolutely ruthless, but it was so deceptive because he would just, he had this, I thought that the left made a real mistake in trying to portray him as an idiot. And that's what they did. They portray him as an idiot who, didn't know what he was doing. Do that all you want, but he got in power, and anytime he was in power, he was ruthless. Oh. He was and he was decisive too. He wasn't one of these.
Really?
He was absolutely ruthless and decisive. Like, I didn't look at Bush as like, oh, he's just like, look, man, his dad was at the forefront of the CIA.
That's weird because, like I said...
His dad... Well, I'll say this. His dad was around... His dad was in the agency, basically, when Kennedy got killed.
Oh, my gosh. Okay.
So, the Bushes are a ruthless group of people. They're not...
Would you say more ruthless than Clinton? The Clintons?
Well, Clinton's, we bombed Sarajevo, whatever. You remember Hillary was dodging sniper fire from the, little Bosnian girl.
Good thing she's so in shape.
But, we're talking about over 1 million civilian deaths between Afghanistan and Iraq, and that is being conservative.
Yikes.
And those are not all Bush, because Obama went in there and he had 8 years, and he didn't get us out of there either. My point is to say, when it talks about to be done with all this measuring of truth, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. Anyway, I told the truth and I'm not afraid to die. He's basically saying I'm innocent, and and then when you think about the racial ramifications of the death penalty, there's a Middle America episode that I shot where the disparity between who actually ends up being executed versus who's doing most of the murders in America, it's clearly slanted. And we'll put that Middle America episode in the link in the description. But I was quoting hardcore right wingers who are basically racists themselves, basically saying, "Whoa, this is disproportionate here." Like, whoa, like this is not, you know. So that's the other side of it is like we're final. This is like a final solution to a person's crime, and it's like we're not even sure. Like again, the axe murderer lady, it was like open and shut. It was clearly her. She did it. You know, fine. Like,
well, yeah, but I guess like what is your point in executing someone? What are you trying to accomplish through that execution? Like, I guess I a lot of times thought that like an execution was just somebody who poses a threat to society, and they're just so toxic that they're not changing, and just having them around, it's very, very toxic. And so you have to say, this is we can't do this. Like you have got to be eliminated from society. But I didn't realize that it was, I mean, she did this, and what she did was horrible.
Yeah.
You know.
No two ways about it.
Yeah, but you know, there was obviously changes, but I guess I don't know. That's
well, the argument is it's a deterrent, and you see this in the Old Testament, right? So Cain kills Abel.
Yep.
And Cain says, "Whoever finds me will kill me." And God's disposition is also always mercy is going to triumph over judgment. Mm-hmm. So God says, "No, I'm not going to let anybody kill you. I'm going to put a mark on you, and I'm going to be your personal bodyguard. Right. So nobody's going to touch you." So that's chapter 4. Mm-hmm. Chapter 5, so we get, and then Cain goes off and he lives a life, and he's got kids, and he builds a city, and nobody touches it. So God's like, "I'm going to protect you."
Yep.
So that was God's, so that shows us God's heart toward capital punishment.
Yep.
Then in chapter 5, Lamech shows up. He's got 2 wives, and he sings this song. It's one of the first songs recorded in the Old Testament, where Lamech says, "A guy stepped on my shoe, he struck me, I killed him." Mm-hmm. So if Cain is avenged 70 times, I will be avenged, 77 times.
Yeah.
Right? And so, and then so that's chapter 5. And then in chapter 6, it then says the entire world became filled with violence. And so the point of that narratival arc is to say, we took God's mercy, and instead of having mercy triumph over judgment, we took God's mercy and converted that into more judgment in the sense of we're killing more people. Mm-hmm. And then the world became filled with violence. So then when Noah gets off the ark, God says, "Okay, if you shed blood, then by man's blood it shall be shed, because man is created in the image of God." Mm-hmm. And so God says, "Okay, you guys can't, you don't want to function on a mercy paradigm, so fine, do the death penalty, because love is not enough." And because, when God forgives you for horrible sins, it's supposed to break your heart and make you say, "I'm never going to do this again," and yada, yada, yada. But that's not how we responded. So God goes, "Okay, fine. Well, we'll just institute capital punishment so that you guys don't kill each other." And so that functions as a deterrent, right? So that's the argument. The argument is to function as a deterrent.
Yeah.
But what we see with Cain and Lamech and going into Genesis 6 is that's not God's ideal. And so then when you get into the New Testament, when you get into the New Testament and you see that Jesus is dying, and there's probably 10,000 messages on what God is communicating to us through the cross. One of those 10,000 messages is, "Hey, you just killed an innocent person. You just killed a really good person. Not only a person,
I was going to say, not only a not innocent, but somebody not good.
Right, you didn't kill a not guilty person, because there's a difference between being not guilty and being an incredibly good person.
Right.
And so, and then the other side of that is, and by the way, it was a religious apparatus that accomplished that. Now they used, the Roman legal means to do it, but it was right-wing, hyper-religious people. There was evangelicals. And we don't have the time to get into the Pharisees and how they developed, but basically, that was us in Jesus' time. The Pharisees were the evangelicals of Jesus' time. And God's like, "So you're really confident that you should be doing this? Hello? You just killed an innocent person." And then, of course, you've got the tradition of the woman caught in adultery, and when Jesus saves her, and he says, "You without sin, cast the first stone," da-da-da. And somehow, evangelicals read that, they ignore all of that, go to Romans 14, and says, "The soldier doesn't bear the sword in vain." Mm-hmm. As if that means that they're supposed to be soldiers and they're supposed to be distributing God's wrath, even though the previous chapter just said you are not to be a distributor of wrath.
Right. Some verses are easier to see and remember.
Sadakt. So it is a very, very strange thing to me that when it comes to killing evangelical right-wing, and that I have to say right, because like I said, there's a whole left side of evangelicalism that was against the Iraq War, that was joining on the left wing and using the same argument. We're killing innocent people. What did the Iraqis have to do with 9/11? What does Hamza over there in Kirkuk have to do with what happened in Manhattan? Nothing. Why are we bombing the hell out of this kid? It was the leftists that were pleading with us and saying, "What the hell are you doing?" And I remember being in a little Bible study. We had one little leftist guy. And he would get really emotional, and I would just remember being like, "What's wrong with this guy, man?"
Oh, really?
Oh, man. Yeah, GH. He was really emotional about it, and the rest of us were just like, "Man, hey, 9/11 happened." He was like, "What does that have to do with Iraq?" Well, you saw the intelligence reports. He's like, "Come on, guys, like, what are you doing?" And even if we all know that it was all BS now, but even if it was true, like, your posture as a Christian, it should not be that you're going to advocate for the death of anybody.
Yeah, and I think that throws people off too. Like, it's unexpected when we're like, we're pro-life, and they're like, "Well, what do you think about capital punishment?"
Right.
And we're like, "We don't agree with it." Wait,
Right. Yeah. I do not. Well, here's I'm not going to say don't agree with capital punishment. What I will say is I am never, ever, ever going to advocate for capital punishment.
Right.
I'm not. It's inappropriate for a Christian to advocate for capital punishment. So it's Romans 13. It's not Romans 12. So Romans 13 tells you the soldier doesn't bear the sword in vain. He's God's servant. Da 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 da. And then Romans 12 tells you, do not be an avenger. Don't take vengeance for yourself. Do not avenge yourselves, beloved. Leave room for God's wrath. It is written, "Vengeance is mine. I will repay," says the Lord. Now, a lot of people look at it, they're like, "Oh, that's a really terrible thing to say." No, actually, because even if you're an atheist, right? If I say I am not going to avenge you, I'm going to leave you in God's hand and let God distribute vengeance, because He's the only one that can distribute it perfectly to the letter.
Yep.
Because He knows all the contingent factors and all the rest of it. So I'm going to leave that to Him. It's not for me to execute wrath. Even if you're an atheist, you could say, "Okay, well, that works for me," because it levels out the playing field, and then you have one less bloodthirsty person.
Right.
On the contrary, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he is thirsty, give him a drink, and in so doing you will heap burning coals on his head. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. So that's what the Christians are told to do. And then in chapter 13, he talks about the governing authorities, who at the time was Caesar Nero. He was horrible. He was called a beast, even by his own people. He was the one that set Rome on fire, yada, 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 yada. And he ended up killing himself because he was so terrible. And then it says, he is God's servant for your good. If you do wrong, be afraid, for he does not carry the sword in vain. He's God's servant and an agent of retribution to the wrongdoer. So he is an agent of vengeance. The sword is an agent of vengeance. And you were just told in the previous one to leave vengeance to the wrath of God. So we should not be supporting this stuff. I mean, it's terrible. And I remember watching, I forgot what it was, but it was this movie where these guys this guy was on death row. And the whole movie, you feel sorry for them. It's like, oh man, they're on death row. But then you see the cutscene of what they did.
Oh.
I think it was Jodie Foster it wasn't Jodie Foster, somebody, but basically they took these girls and raped them in the middle of the field and killed them in cold blood. So when you see that, in the last 10, 15 minutes of the movie, you're like, okay,
right.
where is the I'll do it myself. So I'm not saying that there aren't times when I want to be, I'm not one to talk. I mean, obviously. So yeah, there are absolutely, and I knew dudes who felt like it was their job to bring down God's wrath on people, and they'd have Bible verses and Night Stalkers. They have Isaiah 6 as their motto. who will go for us? And I said, here I am, send me.
Oh my gosh.
And it's the Night Stalkers. That's and there's a lot of that in the military, and a lot of that ethos, because and they're good people. They're not like bloodthirsty, you know. Like, the most bloodthirsty people I've seen are like right-wing evangelicals who's never seen death before in their lives and have no idea what it actually, you know, like, but like, so these guys are not that, but they really look at it as like they're put on this earth to kill evil people. And there's some evil people, man.
Yeah.
You take some kid in Iraq and you send him to some souk, some market, and he's mentally retarded. Like, they take a guy with like kid with severe mental retardation, they strap a suicide bomb to him, and they tell him to go buy a mango in the souk, and then they detonate him, and he kills like 9 other people with him, and then his parents are looking for him. Can't find
They don't even know.
Of course not. These are evil. So look, man. So I'm not saying that.
That's terrible.
Well, you know.
I mean, it was already bad enough to like do that to a kid, but like just snatch up somebody's kid.
Yeah. So you know. So you put a guy like that on the ground, you're not
awful.
really gonna lose a lot of sleep over it. You know?
Yeah. No, I hear what you're saying.
So, like, being a merciful person takes a ton of strength and a ton of resilience and a lot of mental toughness. Taking vengeance on a human side is not that difficult. It's mercy that's really, really difficult. And that's, you know, and of course, obviously, if you're following Jesus always takes the like, hey, here's a straight path from A to Z. Here's a circuitous route. And by the way, carry this 90-pound beam on your back while we're going. Like, that's Jesus's way.
Right.
Always doing the hard thing. But
I saw this movie one time, and I don't even know if it was based on actual events. It seemed like, I don't know. I don't know if it was Hitler or what. I think it was Hitler. And there was this Jewish kid that was basically like his little slave, had to do whatever it was that he wanted. And the kid was supposed to scrub out the bathtub, and there was like a ring. You know how the bathtub gets all built up with it? He had to scrub all that off, and he wasn't able to get it all off. Well, he had been talking to this woman prior to that, not the kid, but if it was Hitler, I don't know. And she was a Christian that was trying to like put those ideas, and was talking about like mercy and forgiveness and how those things are more difficult. So it's a weak person that takes vengeance, but a strong person that can forgive.
Right.
And so, you know, I think she talked to him about like releasing people of their, I release you, you know, that's actually a point of strength. And so then like he went, and the tub thing wasn't finished. And so he was like, why didn't you do that or whatever? And the kid was like, I couldn't get it out or whatever. And he was like, oh. And like there was like this moment, and then he was like, I release you. And then the kid went out, and he was going across the thing, and then they shot him. So he couldn't do it. And I don't know if it was actually true or not, but I remember like, I was like, oh my gosh, because he was, you know, but it was true that vengeance or taking that, like, it was, he had to go to, he just reverted back to that because the other thing was too hard. It was too hard to forgive. It was too hard to give mercy.
Yeah. Well, it happens almost every time when I make a pacifistic argument to hyper right-wing Christians. They inevitably say, I'll protect your daughter, I'll protect your wife.
Yeah.
And that's supposed to be some like,
yeah,
you're a coward, blah,
even
blah,
your
blah,
friends
blah.
have said that.
Yeah, well, it's mostly my friends. It's like, blah, blah, blah. And like, these are people who've never been in a physical, like I can tell, have never been in a physical altercation in their life, are, you know, I've seen them in pressure situations and they crack under the pressure.
Right.
Like these are not hard people, and they've never used a weapon or even intended on using a weapon on a person in their entire life.
Yeah.
But here they are, all protected. You know, it's like, look, man, I was around. I carried weapons, you know, and you know, I was going to say in the Old Testament, you know, like in my Old Testament days, and you know. It's not a glamorous thing at all. Everybody was scared to death.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Is like, that's why I always say, it's like, I've been around people that did that. I've known killers. Like these are people who are scared to death. They're
yeah.
We were all carrying shit because we were scared.
Right.
So the whole tough guy thing, like, it doesn't work for me. Like the reason that you have all this arsenal at your house is because you're afraid. That's why. you A, don't think you can handle your own business by yourself, or B, you're afraid somebody's going to come in there and do X, Y, and Z thing, and C, you as a Christian don't believe that God is going to protect your family. So please miss me with the tough guy stuff. Like you're not hard, but this is what they do.
Oh yeah,
you know?
yeah,
like,
I know. Yep.
But I think like our penchant toward the death penalty is also, I think, rooted in fear. Because as a Christian, you're supposed to say, "Hey, we're going to go out there and we're going to infiltrate and change a society such that the death penalty would be a something that the majority of us don't want to happen, and B, something that becomes unnecessary."
Yeah.
So, like, during Jonathan Edwards' revivals, like, the cops basically had nothing to do.
Right.
Because everybody was so busy praising God, reading their Bibles, and loving their neighbors that the cops were like, well, I mean, nobody was even jaywalking.
Under cats, we can get out of the trees.
But like, this is why I said, like, I'm a new world person, I'm not a heaven person. Because if you're a heaven person, then everything changes, right? Like if it's just about heaven and this whole world's going to go up in ash and smoke, then you want to protect yourself and live as comfortable as possible, until you get raptured out of here, right? Like whereas if you're looking at it like we were left behind here to create a new world that reflects heaven. Like, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Yep. Okay, that's our job. So when I interface when that message interfaces with the death penalty, I go, okay, I open the Bible and say, well, what's God's heart toward capital punishment? And if you start from Genesis, you see what it was. Right. He doesn't like doing it.
Right. Right.
And he protects the killer.
Right.
From the people who would rightly avenge them. So anyway.
I mean, being God, he already knew it was going to happen, but still, he went to the killer and was like, listen, if you don't chill, this could get very bad.
Right. Right. So, I thought it was a good song. Watch that Middle America video on Capital Punishment. If you're a right-wing Christian who believes that we should just kill them, it's what the Bible says, kill them. I would really, really hope that you would watch that Middle America video. It's very, very informative. It has all the sources there, etc., etc. What do you give the song?
It was very old, it seemed, and it was difficult to hear. But I still liked it. It just makes it a little bit harder because the audio wasn't that great. So, I mean, topic-wise, I think it's a good topic. So maybe an 8.2.
I have no idea what you're talking about. I heard it perfectly. It's a 9.5.
What do you mean you heard it perfectly?
It's a 9.5 for me.
Is there something wrong with my headphones?
I don't know. It's a 9.5 for me. Okay. Really, really good song.
There you have it.
Very risky. And honestly, a Christian should have made this song.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
Like, if you compare, Christian music to the Psalms, it's like, the Psalms are so much more metal. But
whoa.
I don't know.
Maybe my headphones weren't plugged in good.
Yeah. Yeah, that's probably the situation.
Oh yeah, because I didn't hear that very... Okay, so I'm gonna up the score then.
9.5 for me.
I'll up it to a 9.1.
There you go. Good song. Good pick. I'd like to know. I'd like to know who drove that car for the. This was the A99 Alliance, right?
Yep.
I want to know who drove that car.
Yep.
So anyway, good pick. Heavy topic. Vin out.
Sori out.
Gone.